Skills, interests, and values. We realize that if these very differences that will increase our awareness and understanding through this process, we will look for opportunities and create space to get our partner talking and share the air. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Brandon, can you read the next one?
Assume best intentions. Trust that people are doing the best they can and that everyone is attempting to balance being honest, vulnerable, and imperfect with standards of perfection, mastery, and survival.
Angela, can you read the next one?
Challenge the idea, not the person. If we wish to challenge something that has been said, we will challenge the idea or the practice referred to, not the individual sharing this idea or practice.
Redefine the term safe space. Conflict and discomfort are often a part of growth. Make sure that to differentiate between feelings of discomfort and experiences with conflict and being unsafe. Brandon, next one.
Trust the process. The journey to our destinations offer us the chance to gain insights about ourselves and others. These insights help us grow and change and contribute to our cohesion, offering us opportunities for gratitude and appreciation on the way to goal achievement.
Angela, next one.
Be responsible for your contributions and your own impact. Whatever you share is your responsibility in person, in our written discourse, or on social media. Take responsibility for your contributions and own the impact they make.
Awesome. And so let me share a link to that same thing here in the chat. And I encourage you actually just to download that even to refer to. But I think there's a lot of good valid points there. For me, what really stuck out to me in that list is the, how do they phrase it? They say, challenge the idea, not the person. And I think that's an important thing, that in these times, it's really easy to get personal about stuff and just say, well, if you believe that, you're a bad person. And that's not exactly a productive way to have a conversation. And so the more that you can sort of just ask more like, what do you mean by that? And focus on the idea itself rather than the person, I think that's an important thing. So Brandon, what's one that stands out to you?
Probably.
And you can see a link to it in the Google Doc in the chat if you want to pull that up. There's a link right there for that.
I feel like challenging the idea, not the person, is a very big one, because sometimes when you find people disagreeing nowadays, you tend to target the person rather than what the discussion is about.
Yep. Yeah, and again, I think that's where we get into dangers when things get too personal. So, Angela, how about you?
Probably the last one, the social media one, because I feel like a lot of people just post a lot of stuff and don't realize that it's permanent.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And also that the last point about be responsible for your contributions and your own impact. And I feel like especially on social media, people aren't nearly as hesitant or don't think twice about posting something, especially if they can do so anonymously. Then I feel like that's when you get really into dangerous people saying some really radical stuff that can be very hurtful to others. And so I think that whole idea of thinking before you speak and before you act, but not being afraid to do that too. I mean, I think that's the next big step, is that, sometimes people, and especially young people, say something and it's going to offend or be hurtful to someone, but that's not what they intended, right? They didn't intend it to be offensive. They didn't intend for it to be hurtful. And then you can get into this spiral of oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that, and I'm going to get defensive, or I'm going to deny it. And I don't know, it's not very productive. And so we got to try to find ways, especially in the classroom, you're having these discussions to kind of rise above that. So, hi Garrett, how you doing?
I'm good. Just had some computer troubles.
That's all right. I mean, you're the third out of 9 to actually show up. So, so I appreciate that. We're having a conversation just about, having tough conversations about political or personal views, given that these are divisive times with a U.S. election coming up and things are going on all around the world too. And so we kind of read through a document. If you look in the chat, I'm going to post it again for you, Garrett. There's a link in the chat to a document that Stevenson just wanted us to read through. And it's a good kind of just norms, things to try to hold yourself by if you're going to have these sort of tough conversations. And we've been highlighting things like, challenging the idea, not the person, making sure you're responsible for what you say. There's a lot of good points in there. You know, trusting the process, assume best intentions, that people aren't just trying to be hateful. They're just trying to find a way to express themselves. Those are all good things to keep in mind. So, have you guys had any conversations like this in any of your classes, English or history, or nothing's come up? All right. Yeah, I'm wondering if it will come up in the next week or so. But I'm trying to find ways. I mean, I don't know how I would bring it up in the science class, but it's worth having if there's value to it. But you kind of have to live by these norms. And that's why I like the point on the bottom of this page where it really says like norms are only powerful when they're lived by every day. And so that's the thing, is to be aware of this and make sure everyone is kind of participating in that same way. So, all right, any other comments or questions on that? Norms for potentially polarized conversations. Okay, next thing that we were going to do was a video, which is targeted more to teachers, but I think it's for anyone who is in sort of a leadership position. If you're leading a discussion or a group and where people suddenly start bringing these topics up, this is kind of a good thing to keep in mind. So again, I put it in the chat. It's an Adobe video, but you should be able to open it up. It is about 7 minutes long. And so I will let you go. We'll just meet ourselves and let's just go ahead and watch it. We don't need to watch it together. I'll have you each watch it on your own. Are you all able to open it? Cool. So give it a watch and then we'll come back together. I'll watch it too. So once I'm done, I'll unmute myself and we can check in. So go for it. So I know that was targeted at teachers sort of managing a classroom, but I do think there are aspects of that apply to you guys too, like within friend groups. And they make an important point that like within friend groups, you know, sometimes you're not necessarily going to have that idea of repair or forgiveness, or it's going to take a lot longer. Teacher in a classroom, right? It's part of our job to kind of build that community, so that should always be possible for us. But I do think that these things do apply even to friend groups, or at least that whole idea of like sort of stopping, slowing down the conversation, being sensitive about it, could be something that's helpful for you to apply too. The other point is that if these conversations, if something like this does happen in your class, in one of your classes, and these steps aren't really taken, that's something good to kind of let me know about too. You know, if you're feeling uncomfortable in a classroom or around a certain student for a comment they made, because again, it's our job as Stevenson teachers to kind of help work through that, and my job as an advisor as well. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. First one, what was the distinction they made between impact and intent? That was one of the main things. I think it was step 3 or step 4, about impact versus intent. How did you understand that? What's the difference between those things and which one's more important? Go ahead, Brandon.
Well, impact, they said impact was more important than your intent.
Mm-hmm. And why though, like, how could those, so like Angela or Garrett, how could those like not match up sometimes? You know, like some people have an intent versus impact, like when would those, or what's an example when those wouldn't match up?
Well, no matter the intent, the impact is kind of what leaves a lasting impression on someone, and what'll actually matter and what can hurt or be harmful to someone. Because the intent, whether it's good or bad, it doesn't really reflect in the impact usually.
Yep. Yeah, and I think this is where some people can get in trouble, right? And I've learned a lot about this idea of microaggressions and times where you're technically sort of being hurtful to others without even really knowing it. And again, it's because you didn't intend it. But again, that's not what matters, right? The matter is the impact that's having on others, and just how everyone needs to be more self-aware. I need to be more self-aware about how or what I'm doing that might be causing that. So that's a good point. What about the fight or flight distinction that I thought was kind of interesting? Again, it's more geared towards teachers, but I feel like everybody, if you're in a situation with friends or where you're in charge of a group, what do you think? Do you think you have more of a flight response or a fight response? Do you quell it or ignore it? I think I definitely have more of a flight response. I'm kind of like, I've only had a couple instances in my classes in the past where I feel like things have gotten a little uncomfortable, and I've very much been like, all right, well, let's move on and don't worry about it. Angelo, what do you think? Would you be more flight or fight?
Probably flight.
Garrett?
It probably depends on how comfortable I am in the class, or if someone else is already dealing with a situation a certain way, maybe.
Yeah. Brandon?
I feel like I'd be kind of like more of like the same thing. Like it feels like I feel like it depends on how comfortable I am with the person I'm discussing it with. But I think I tend to be more of like a flight response.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think those are, the thing that either one of those, fight or flight, is kind of more the easy way out, right? To either just quell it or ignore it. The challenging thing is to do what they're recommending, right? Which is to slow down the conversation, stop. I like that idea of like what and why, right? What was said, why was it said, and kind of take the time, slow things down to explore it, right? That's the challenge where we're not fighting it, we're not flying away from it, but rather just addressing it. Another question that was in the question list that I thought was kind of interesting, I just put it in the chat, is what does it mean to cancel someone? And to be honest, I mean, this is something I've heard a little bit about, but wasn't that familiar with. And I was wondering if any of you know more about this, because I have heard of this cancel culture idea. What's your understanding of this canceling someone or cancel culture? Have you heard this expression before, like cancel culture? So Garrett, what do you think it means?
Basically that you can use just like a specific point in someone's like career or life or something, and you can use that to kind of just cancel their career by like showing how it maybe doesn't follow like societal like what's like accepted now, and specifically with like cancel culture, it's like a harmful way typically of kind of just deconstructing someone's like entire like credibility just based on maybe one or two things, especially from the past.
Well said. Angela, what do you think?
I think it's basically what Garrett said, but it's mainly for like celebrities or just famous people.
I feel like that's who's really being impacted by it. Brandon?
Yeah, I'd say it's something very similar to that. It's like targeted toward people that are well known or like celebrities. And it's like, well, when you're talking about it, it's like cancel culture would be like this large group of people that are shunning people and like sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good word to use, that idea of shun. I think that hits it right on the head. Yeah, I'd heard about this a little bit, but then I hadn't thought much about it until I was talking to a friend who has a brother who was running he runs like a basically like a yoga business, and kind of got himself in trouble on social media, posted something that wasn't, he probably should have thought twice about posting as well, but also just got interpreted in a wrong way anyway. But again, it's this idea of impact versus intent. The impact was that he suddenly was getting shunned, so he lost all of his customers, and his business is now pretty much on the rocks because he got canceled. Anyway, why I want to discuss this though is because think about what we just talked about and this idea of having a conversation, exploring. So give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Does cancel culture align with what we've been discussing about tough conversations? I'm going to say no, right? And I think, Brandon, you hit on it. It's this idea of shunning, right? That's not going to help anyone. It's sort of, I think, the easy way out to sort of just be like, well, forget that. But I think it goes right against that point in that first document too, about challenging the idea, not the person, right? Cancel culture seems very person oriented. Like you said, there's celebrities who have these personas and they immediately get attacked, rather than focusing on the ideas and this idea of like what was said and why was it said. And so I think that's what we've got to, do our best to steer clear of this idea of cancel culture. And you said it's like, I gave an example of a business, you gave example of celebrities, but as far as I understand, this is happening within friend groups too. That there are some people who maybe have a different view from their group of friends, and suddenly their friends are all shunning them and shutting them out on social media and not talking to them. And I don't know, to me, it really doesn't help any situation. And so I just want to encourage you to, even though I know this is all about teachers in the classroom, I think it's something that's applicable in your lives as well, especially during these times where you can have these tough conversations. So yeah, that's kind of the main point I wanted to make. Any other questions or comments? All right. Again, I think one of the big takeaways from this as well, though, is just, again, I'm here as a person to help you with your relationship between the school and the teachers. And so if there is ever a situation in the classroom where you felt uncomfortable, you feel like something was said and wasn't dealt with properly, or that you want to expand more on so that you feel more comfortable, you can let me know about that. And I don't know exactly what the process will look like after that, but we're striving to all try to align with these ideals and follow this process. It's going to be challenging, but I think it's important to do, especially now, especially how divisive things are getting over things like the election and politics and just conservative and liberal views. So, okay, that's all I wanted to discuss about. I got to go get my flu shot, and I want to give you guys a break before your classes start at 2. So I hope all is well otherwise. Real quick, what are your plans for the weekend? Brandon, what's something you're going to do?